Next lesson, we're going to create a player. So the player will inherit several likelihood of the ball sprite. So the ball sprite is using circle collider, player movement also, and the camera controller. So all of this will be added to the player movement to the player. So before you start, make sure that you already imported the player character sprite. Okay, so there are several status of character based on the animation that we're gonna apply karang. So I will explain this later on. So make sure you drag this inside Unity, inside the character niya. Sini. Sprites, characters. I already have it here. Okay. So now we're going to create a player dulo. So similar to how we did it in what we call this in the ball sprite. So we're gonna drag the player here first. So we're gonna change the sorting layer to characters. Okay. We're gonna resize it in an appropriate size to the player. We're gonna tag this player, the small letter P player. We're gonna add a rigid body. We're gonna add a polygon collider 2D. Okay. And also, we're gonna add a script. So the script is the same as player movement. We're just gonna drag it out of the player. Sorry. So we will select the player first. Okay. And then we're gonna drag the player movement to the script. Alright. So similar to what we did to the ball sprite, because you notice in our player movement punya script, it's looking for a ground checkpoint, ground check radius. This one we can change this to ground. So for the ground check radius, it's quite hard to estimate the ground check. So we just need to check here. Okay, -1. Let me change this kadya pa. Edit. Because it's no longer a circle, so we cannot estimate the ground niya, the radius. So here, for the ground checkpoint, we will experiment dulo. We will put 0.5. For the ground checkpoint, we have to add dulo. So I'm gonna right click the player idle, create empty inside, and I will rename this to ground checkpoint. So before we do animation, we are going to make sure that the player is, sorry, select on the player dulo. Sorry. Then we're gonna drag the ground checkpoint. Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna drag it here, the ground checkpoint. Alright. Another thing, since it's a new character, we have to bind it to the camera. So select main camera. Since the main camera requires a player, so we're gonna drag player idle to the main camera. Alright. So once we're done with that, we're going to drag the player to the prefab. Sorry. Select. And then we're just gonna call it player. Okay. So let's try if the jump then the movement still applies to the player. Hopefully there's no error. Okay. Okay. You notice our player is too small. That's probably because of our previous setting in which we initialize the size of the ball. So I want you to go to player movement script and here change the size of it's named ball dimension. So we can just rename it nanti. You can call it player dimension, but you have to change your jua. Okay? So let's say I change this to player dimension and I change to 2.89. That's the size niya, the scale. Because study 0.89 is too small for a player. Okay, sorry, check the spelling. Then I'm gonna save this and I will try it again here. Another thing to prevent the player from, just take a look first. Hmm, sorry. Oh, the player tumba. So it doesn't make sense. So we're gonna edit it first. Sorry, I have to pause the video now. Okay. So make sure you adjust the ground check of the player to the bottom. Okay. So if you play this, okay, the player now can jump. And it's not jumping on air. And the problem is this one, the tumbang. So in order to fix that, we need to freeze the rotation of the player. So by selecting the player, so we're gonna freeze the rotation here. Where is it? Points? No. Okay, freeze, freeze rotation of Z. Okay, this one. Constraints, freeze position under rigid body. So now it won't ano anymore. Tapi we will fix the rest of the issue. Okay. So for better adjustment, you can adjust the polygon colliders niya. So that because the hair po, the body niya not perfectly wrapped, but make sure it's wrapped properly. Okay, so that's it for changing sprite. In the next video, we will discuss about animation.